Welcome back everybody to the hunt, and today we shall be hunting the Fulgur Anjananth. The Fulgur Anjananth is an interesting beast to begin with, because first of all, it's one of the major redesigns we see from classic monsters outside of Tobi-Kadachi and Shrieking Legiana. And if we're going to play by fair rules, I legitimately think Fulgur Anjananth is amongst the best subspecies that we see in both World and Iceborne, or variants, or whatever, however you want to class him. I think Fulgur Anjananth is done beautifully, both in his look, his kit, his idea, and his passive abilities, and all of those factors in mind, as well as the fight itself being an invigorating new look to what was a pretty early game threat, now built up to a proper mid-game level. So let's go over it in the following few minutes that we have in this hunt. First of all, let's talk about the looks of the Fulgur Anjananth. I absolutely cannot describe how much more awesome this species is than the original. I like the stripes better, I like the coloration better, I like the effects and particles way more. I just love how this thing looks. We will see later on that the Fulgur Anjananth has a lot more variance as to how it is perceived, something that's not akin to most of the subspecies or variant in the rest of the game. So, like, if you look at Tobi-Kadachi, for example, its changes are mostly in its color palette rather than anything else. So if you look at the monster in general, it's like, well, that's just a Tobi-Kadachi, but instead of being a bluish white, it's now a greenish brown to represent the poison, and a little bit of purple in order to, like, give this a little more validity. Well, the Fulgur Anjananth is clearly a very distinctive look and truly feels like a different variant of the same species. So instead of just being a color swap, it also has some physiological changes in those stripes. And look at the wings and the nostril, the nostrils coming out of its face. I don't know if they're actually nostrils, but look at the coloration of that, and look at it when he lights it up and he becomes a charged monster. It's so unbelievably beautiful. And I will repeat myself for a very long time about it, because it is absolutely perfect. The air, the lightning particles, I don't know how not every other monster in this game don't have lightning particles are this beautiful, especially lightning monsters. Think of all the lightning monsters there are in this game, which there aren't a ton of. You have the Tobi-Kadachi, you have the Kirin, and I don't think the lightning on all of these look as good as the Fulgur does. Also, the name Fulgur Anjananth is just awesome. It's unbelievably cool. With this new look for the character, the monster, however you want to approach it, also comes a new kit of abilities, which I think the Fulgur has an invigorated and very well done new kit to his arsenal, or new spins on his old attacks that can make it a little more interesting depending on how the Fulgur is in which state. Just like, say, let me think of a monster real fast. I can't think of a monster right now, but this monster can be either in a normal state or in a charged state. Think of it as like the Glavenus Tail, when it can be heated and then it's rusted, or in a normal state. It's not heated, yeah? The Fulgur is kind of the same way, but his whole body can be charged with electricity to make it better. He has a really number of really cool moves. Look at those wings! Look at those wings! Oh god, they're beautiful! So, his new kit in general involves a lot of, surprisingly so, a few projectile attacks from his nostrils as he spits out from it, just to demark his territory. And to use it as an attack is really cool. But the distance and area of effect abilities on this man is also fairly dangerous to deal with, and I really like it. I'm usually not a fan of heavy projectile attacks, but since he only has about one or two, it makes it interesting. Now, what's really interesting about it is his new gap clearing moves. He has one particular move, which I guess you could call that the super move for the Fulgur Anjananth, where he full ghost torpedoes on your ass. Also, that was a Gajakalaka killing me with a spear. I would just wanted to say. He has a move where he full torpedoes on your ass, and that's basically a supernova, so to say, his biggest move in his arsenal, and that's probably one of his biggest gap closer. You also got the normal pounce attack on the Anjanath, but when he becomes new interesting is with his biting moves and swiping move, where usually when he does a biting motion, there's one particular move that's very easy to see where he bites off the ground and it's trying to reach you, and if he's in a charged state, he will electrify the grounds, doing basically an AoE type of attack that's delayed after the bite. So it's still a move where you can punish the head from going down and then back off from an evading position. So if you're playing something like the Dual Blades, what you could do is you could round slash into the head to deal some damage, and then L2 out of there so you can sling burst dodge your way out of there. So there's a lot of new moves on the Anjanath that will allow you to gain new ways of actually dealing with the monster, and I really, really liked it. Now, that's a little bit about this new kit, so let's go over the math and see where it's potentially the best about it. Unfortunately, we did not see the math for the original Anjanath, but let's look at this one in particular. For when it comes to specificity of cutting damage, we have an average of 47, which is really high. Most of the other ones are in the 30s, if barely 40s. This guy is in the high 40s when it comes to hit zone, which is humongous, but there's a ton of stuff to go around it and why it deals so much. So the first thing you should see is that usually he's a lot more resistant when it comes to in a charge state than he is in normal state. So the closer you are at finishing the fight fast, the easier it is, and it just becomes to resistances. But this is where it gets really interesting. While he has higher raw resistances in his charge state, when it comes to physical resistances, so if you're going with a raw weapon, if you're using an elemental weapon, he becomes a lot more viable to deal with when in a charge state than in his normal state, if only because of the conductivity of his main elemental weakness, which is water. And I love this idea. And also another thing that's interesting is that his second main weaknesses is ice. So if he's in a normal state, ice is also a very good option, especially if you want to clear the quest faster, or you want to deal as much possible damage as possible before he goes into a charge state, or you want to deny it by soloking him or staggering him, which is really, really cool. So when it comes to elements, when he's charged, water. When he's not charged, ice. But since the fight is dynamic, it really depends on how you want to go about it. Again, if you're using a raw weapon, it's all about finishing the fight as soon as possible to avoid the charge state to begin with, which is a generally much more dangerous state. So bring in an ice weapon. If you go for elemental and you want to do really sustained damage, so as bow or dual blades, you would go for that. Even SNS, sword and shield. When it comes to the other area zone, every other value on his body as either charge state and or a normal state. There are two occasions where you have a broken state, but that goes also for the original Anjanath. So for the nose, it's a 65 to 65, the head is 60 to 55, the neck is 30 to 23, the wings is 65 to 55, the torso to 30 to 23, the legs 30 to 35, which is higher. That's the main change. I don't know why it's that way, but it is. And the tail is from 60 to 65. The reason why the legs are actually weaker from a lore standpoint, I don't know, but from an actual gameplay standpoint, the fact that you have a higher value and higher risk to go into a potentially dangerous state and deal more damage to probably the main source, the main body part where you're supposed to deal damage, which is the leg, that's pretty good, especially considering you can break those legs and actually get a higher hit zone value out of it, which then again, if you have a sustained weapon, aiming for the legs is the best tactics to fight the Fulgur Anjananth. As to be fair, a lot of other monsters, but it's very specific to the Anjanath too, especially if you're running with something in like Critical Eye and you want to gain a boost from Critical Boost, or even Weakness Exploit, just giving you a lot more damaging abilities. Then again, we're going in naked on this one, so we'll have to deal about that. So when it comes to the math, all you gotta understand is that charge state gives him slightly more resistance, not by a whole lot, but you won't be able to land your super move, so you gotta wait and be a lot more patient when it comes to this. When it comes to elemental, again, if he's not in charge, use ice. If he is charged, use water as much as possible, which also is applied to some of the slinger ammo you can use. So if you get something like water moss, Water Moss would be actually fairly effective at decharging him when he's in a charged state. And I don't believe there's any ice-related slinger ammo, but that is one really cool factor about Monster Hunter in general, is that you can use different elemental, environmental factors around you to leverage a fight in your favor, whether it's traps, whether it's turf wars, whether it's other monsters, whether it's slopes, ledges, all that kind of stuff. And a thing that's fairly underutilized, slinger ammo. Just like Water Moss is able to get off the mud of a Baroth, you can do the same thing with the Fulgur Anjananth in decharging him, which is a really cool thing that I feel like a lot of people don't talk enough about, because it's actually a really valid strategy, especially if you're fighting the monster for the first time, which is, let's be fair, if you're fighting a monster for the first time, it's going to take you a lot longer to take it down, especially since you don't have weapons, armor, and abilities that aren't as good as the usual. And fucking T-Rex coming in to ruin my quest once again! That motherfucker! So, in general, those are my fairly straightforward thoughts about the Fulgur Anjananth. So, as a quick recap, I think he has one of the best redesigned species, variants, whatever, best redesigns when it comes to a monster. And then again, it may be to the fact that he was originally from World, but I just think that the lightning does maybe not make sense, but is proven to be an incredibly diverse way to show how the monster is done. And also, there aren't enough lightning monsters to begin with in Iceborne in World to begin with, so just having another one makes the roster a little more interesting instead of having another fucking fire-breathing dragon. Excuse me, wyvern. So I like the variety of him. Again, if you're going to fight him, stick by the sides, watch out for the legs. He has a lot of AoE denying abilities. His projectile from lightning are actually kind of difficult to go around, so please watch out for that. If you try to step into dodge in closer, right? If you do a step dodge closer, you usually have a much easier time to deal with it than if you stay afar, just because of its pounce and grab closer. I was really lucky here too, because I didn't have to deal with his super move where he just completely torpedoes himself into me, but I also had to deal with a lot of shit, just like this Brachydios coming into my invade. He's literally invading my quest. Did you know Monster Hunter World is the Dark Souls of monster games? Oh my god, I hate this comparison. Anyway, Fulgur Anjananth, real cool monster, real cool idea. His new kit was wonderfully realized, probably one of the best redesigned kits, and looks in general. Stay in as close as possible, you'll be fine. It's a little bit of a shame that he get his own theme like a lot of other monsters, but hey, sometime you gotta deal with the goods, and sometime you gotta deal with the bads. In this case, I just died. Well, that is going to be it for now, everybody. We'll see you all for another hunt